God has made each of us with our own unique talents and passions. However, He's made you, there's a place for you in His mission. But what if you're a designer, developer, or have some other technical skill? Can God really use that? My name's Jeremy, and welcome to Indigenous Pulse, where I talk with someone who's sharing the good news using relevant methods from right where they are so we can learn simple steps for reaching our world. In today's episode, I'm talking with Ashley Crutcher, Director of Experience Strategy for InterVarsity, about her experience with missional hackathons and how God redeems technical skills. Hey Ashley, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Jeremy. My pleasure.
We have a lot to talk about, and first it would be good to hear a little bit about you. So can you share about yourself and what you do?
Definitely. My name is Ashley Crutcher. I live in Madison, Wisconsin with my husband, our three housemates, and we have three pets. I'd say during working hours, I am the Director of Experience Strategy at InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. Uh, in not working hours, I hang out with my housemates. We play board games. I love to read. I'm a nerd. I ring handbells for fun, and I really love digging into the latest corporate frameworks and just debating those with my friends and talking about how they can be applied to ministry.
Director of Experience Strategy sounds really interesting. Can you explain what that means?
That's a really great question, and I've struggled to describe it because it's a big shift, I think, for a lot of the ways we think about strategy and ministry and mission. Um, the way I have put it to others, we have in the secular world, we have these companies that are doing a lot of work trying to discover the pains and goals of people, and they're trying to intentionally design experiences so that you buy more from them. We hear a lot of companies going design centric or design led or user centric. And I do think our world is responding to this really positively, right? We're all very excited when we have a product that's like, oh, this is so good. Like, I just bought some gripper slippers. I'm like, these are perfect for indoor Wisconsin winter. And right, I feel like they know me and they get me. And we love that. And as I dug into the design thinking, experience, strategy world, I was a little bit convicted that, like, we love the idea that a company sees us and gets us. And if people can feel seen and known by a company, how much more should they feel seen and known by like mission organizations or Christians who work for the God who like deeply knows and sees them? So my work at InterVarsity in this experience strategy realm, I would say is culture shaping. I'm really asking everybody to join me in following design centered, human centered processes, mindsets, and methods so that the things we make do show people that we love them.
Wow, that's fascinating. Sounds like super fun and interesting work.
It's super fun and I'm a nerd about it.
One of the things we want to talk about are hackathons, and Indigenous just wrapped up doing Indigenous Hack for the 7th year. And I know you've been a part of that before, as well as a number of different
Mm-hmm.
hackathons. But before we really get into that, I guess it'd be good to explain what a hackathon is. I know when I mention it to some people, they get that weird look in their eye, like they're wondering, are you talking about something illegal? Which we're definitely not. So how would you
That's fair.
define a hackathon?
You might start calling like a white hat hackathon opposed to the black hat. Um, to me, hackathons are really about a concentrated time together where you set other things aside and you go all in on working on a mission or a vision. And generally it's tech related, but it doesn't have to be. I've been to design only hackathons where the whole thing was creating a new brand or creating logos or icons for as many nonprofits as we could squeeze into like 24 hours. So I would definitely say the all in together collaboratively bringing a skill set that probably that organization doesn't have and serving them in a really fun way. And there's probably hopefully there's a lot of good food, a lot of fellowship and work done.
You've been to a lot of different hackathons. What can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah. My entire church experience growing up, when I thought about missions and how I could engage in that, it was always centered around like missionaries going over there, or be a nice person in your work environment and then give to the missionaries that are going over there. So hackathons and trips were actually my first exposure to actually the Lord saying to me, no, actually, this is something you can do for like your career or your work all the time. As nobody at church had ever said things like accountants, office managers, culinary staff, all of those folks can work for mission and on mission in ways other than the like being nice at work. And in this day and age, every mission org has a website, has software needs, has finances. And once I like point it out to people, like when I'm doing ministry partnership development, they're like, "Oh yeah," and it should be obvious, but for whatever reason, it's not. So my first actually like hack experience, if you will, was a computer science mission trip that I went on with Taylor University, where I did my undergraduate degree. And on that trip, it was 3 weeks. So it wasn't a weekend hackathon, but it was a compressed amount of time, 3 weeks. We went to Operation Mobilization's international headquarters in the UK to work on some open software they had. And I was just floored because these people came in every day to work on this on mission. I was like, oh, maybe told me like I could do this. And so it was really incredible to see these role models doing this work and having my imagination open that it was something I could do too. And I'll go one step further, like the staff that we met with, the IT staff that were working on the software. When you think accountants or software developers, that's usually it's things like keeping the lights on, running the operations of an organization. But I do want to plug the book, Kingdom Innovation, which also talks about how for a long time Christians were on the forefront of innovation and technology. And hackathons are also a really incredible space to like branch out and try new tech that maybe you don't do in your day to day job, or branch out and try new skills that you don't often get to do, and having the time and space to really try something innovative that maybe we don't always do in our day to day life. So hackathons often get to be in the innovation space. Um, whether you're doing operations type work or you're in that innovation, like all of it is about redeeming, I think, technology for the kingdom.
Yeah, like you said, it's a good way to experience something new. And some people might think like, yeah, I'm a designer, but I'm not that good of a designer. So maybe, I'm not good enough to be able to be helpful or something like that. But I feel like if you
Mm-hmm.
show up and trust God, you'll be surprised by the different ways that God can use you.
I chuckle a little bit because on that trip, that first one I went on, I had 3 semesters of programming under my belt. So I basically knew nothing. And I don't think I was actually of any help. But it was awesome to be there and to learn from others and to just have that experience. So I definitely encourage folks. I almost didn't go on that trip because I thought I didn't know enough. And I'm so glad that I decided to go for it anyway.
Yeah, it reminds me of my first hackathon experience. I went to a Code for the Kingdom event in Albuquerque,
Mm.
New Mexico. And I don't have any technical skills. I'm a
Mm.
writer. I don't know how to do very many other things, but I went just because we were one of the sponsors. So I thought I'd check it out and figure out what's going on over here. And I ended up finding a project I could join. I joined a project. It was creating an animated video game for children that helps teach them about the Bible. And one of
Mm.
the things they needed help with was just sound design, basically, of like all the different sounds in the game, of like anytime there's footsteps or someone opens the door or whatever. Anytime one of those actions happens on screen, you need a sound to
Mhm.
go with it. So sound design is an art form, and I don't want to insult people that do that. Like there is an art to it, but the level I was doing it, you didn't really need special skills. We were just creating a minimum viable product. So all I did was look through some stock
Mhm.
royalty free sound libraries and just kind of go through each one and try them with the action and find out which really sounds best and works best and make those creative decisions. So that's something that I'm not gifted in that particular area, but that's something that a generalist like myself can come in and just contribute. And I think that, yeah, if you show up with an open mind, you'll be surprised by the things you'll see God do at these events.
Yeah, and I think being open to what the Lord is calling you to is incredible. I have another soapbox for another day about how developers and others need to work with writers and designers and artists a lot more often.
So you have a
Mhm.
background in digital design, user experience, and other areas. How have you used those skills for the mission?
Yeah. Um, I want to first share a disclaimer that I don't share the list of things that I have done to sit like, oh, I'm so cool. But I really want to expand the imagination for people that there is so much out there that really needs these skills applied. So I mentioned my first trip, worked on some open source software called Open Petra, which was administrative software that could be given to other nonprofit mission groups. I took a spring break trip called Codathon with an organization called LightSys, where in 1 week we did a 1 week lightning fast redesign of their homepage, and that was one where I learned some new tech. On my second trip with Operation Mobilization, this was really cool actually. We went to they have a ship called the Logos Hope, and there's an intranet, and we worked on their intranet, which was a huge part of their ship community. Like these screens that they had all over the ship were help them know their schedule and help them know birthdays, a common fellowship, um, daily Bible verses, announcements, communications. Like it was the hub of their ship community. It was really important that this intranet was high quality. After graduating college, I joined a mission organization called Global Media Outreach, where we had something like 200 sites in 26 different languages for people searching the internet, trying to find out about the Lord in maybe what felt like safe or private ways. And we tried to connect them to email missionaries. I took that email missionary software and I made it responsive in 2016. No, earlier than that, 2013. And I've been to a couple of the Kingdom Code. Dallas has something called the Dallas Give Camp here in Madison. We had Design Better hackathons. And really, there's so many things. Like one of them was moving an org's volunteer application process from a Word doc to being an online form, designing icons and logos for a group called Cause Studio, building small websites. A lot of these, particularly medium sized to smaller ministries, really just don't have these skill sets. And they get by with just Facebook pages or Facebook groups, and being able to give them a web presence, gain them more legitimacy or help them get grants. It's actually far more reaching, I think, than people realize to be able to give nonprofits these digital spaces that they can really leverage. So online forums, icons, intranets on ships. There's so much out there that we can do for the Lord. It's incredible.
It's amazing the huge variety of different ways that you can serve the Lord just based on your personal experience.
I have been really privileged to do all this.
I think part of the work is just getting the vision out there that these talents and these passions that you have were given to you for a reason, and to take part in God's mission, you don't have to step away from
Yeah.
that. If
Mm-hmm.
you're gifted in design, you don't have to find some other way of getting involved in the mission that you can design for the Lord. And one of the things that I love most about hackathons is just when people catch that, when they get the vision, and you just see it click with
Mm-hmm.
them that, oh, that, wow, these things that I like doing anyway, these things that I'm passionate about and skilled in, they actually matter, and I can actually use these for God. What are the things you've seen God do in these hackathons that have stuck with you?
Oh well, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. Because my favorite part is also watching, particularly new folks experience it, their first touch with missions, and it's the first time that anybody maybe has told them that thing that you're nerdy about and you're gifted in. God wants to use that in you, and I think it's an incredible thing to tell someone that and to see their see a purpose light up in them. So I definitely like fully agree with you. I think the other thing is really, as I said earlier, that nonprofits get access to skills they don't always have on staff. I think that's an incredible matching space that they're getting by in ways that are hard, or they're spending hours and hours trying to set something up that is just not in their wheelhouse. It's not an effective use of time, and it pulls them away from casting vision about their mission, and it pulls them away from maybe some program elements they're trying to do. So when we can come in and in a weekend set up a simple 4, 5, 6 page site for them, or we can give them a pack of social media graphics that they can tweak and change for a year. I can't, I'm sure it would be better if they told you, but from my seat, it seems like we save them a lot of time, a lot of money, and really helps elevate in ways that, without that hack weekend, they would have to do it all on their own. And I don't think we're called to do all of these things on our own at all. And it's wonderful that us with these skills can partner with others to work together for the mission.
You've said that the church has often been at the forefront of innovation, whether it's utilizing Roman roads or the printing press and all those different things. But despite that, I think the church and missions organizations have often underutilized people with these different talents that we're talking about. So, why is it important for such people to be involved in the mission?
Well, I'll give you kind of a this is not a cheap answer, but I do think it's important for any believer to use whatever skills or talents they have for God, regardless of what they are. And sometimes that means even stepping into a skill that you didn't know you had, like sound design, things like that. If you read 1 Corinthians 12 and really up into 1 Corinthians 13, which 1 Corinthians 13 is the famous love passage, but in 1 Corinthians 12, it's an incredible passage about how each of us are gifted for service for Christ. We're all gifted differently, and how that leads us to the way of life that is best of all, a life of overflowing love to others. I won't quote it exactly because I'm an university staff that says go read the whole chapter. I think there's a couple of verses people like to pull out, but really read all of 1 Corinthians 12 and all of 1 Corinthians 13 and see I think a beautiful picture of what it calls the entire body of Christ moving together as one body towards a life that is the best way of life.
Yeah, it's great to keep in mind that whatever your talents are, whether they're technical, creative, or something else entirely, that they matter. That your talents, your interests, your passions, they matter. And God created
Mm-hmm.
us all uniquely, and we all have some place in God's mission.
Yeah, and I mean, I love even inviting project managers to the hackathons. I love inviting writers or even fine artists. One of the coolest experiences that I've had. I was a guest designer invited to work with One Hope. One Hope was partnering with a church that had a very large youth ministry, and this was several years ago. But in the what a design sprint that was being worked through that week, we kind of just invited anybody and everybody, regardless of skill set, because we do believe that everybody has something creative to offer. And I remember coming in, I was a guest designer, and seeing in the room was like a youth ministry pastor, and then they had some of the teens, and then myself, and then there was a developer. But it was really just a lot of the church staff that they were told, like, you have something creative, just come. And the ideation and ideas that came up were so much better, and we could riff off one another. Like, one of the things that came up was this youth group was talking about how do we take it was a very large youth group, and how do folks find their small group when it's dark and you have teens that are socially anxious. And someone had an idea. I was like, well, I was at a concert and they gave us glow sticks, and we went to the area of the concert that had your glow stick color. And we're like, what? And that was an idea that was like, what does that have to do with youth group? But when you play with the idea and it just kind of came up, we're like, oh, well, in a dark room with teens who have smartphones, like, it could glow a color, and you could walk over to your youth group leader who is glowing that color too, and that would be really fun and cool. And that was never an idea I would have come up with myself, made that really neat connection. And so I do believe it's important for every believer to use their skills and talents, but also to believe that you have something creative to offer. So going to these hackathons, even when you feel outside of it, you do have something to offer.
Hackathons are great, but they're
Yeah.
finite. Most of them last a weekend, maybe a week. You were at
Mm-hmm.
one that lasted 3 weeks, but eventually, at some point, it's going to end and everyone's going to pack up and go home. So, is there a place for Christian technologists and
Mm-hmm.
creatives to make a career out of missions?
Yeah, as you said, many hackathons really do hope folks will continue on. At least half of the hackathons I've been to, they have an ongoing Slack or they have an ongoing Discord where they keep hosting times on maybe a quarterly or a monthly basis. And I agree with you. It has, I don't think we've seen folks commit to that. I would say part of that is because it's easy for us to clear a weekend, but it's a lot harder for us to clear time on a really regular basis. So I would encourage anybody listening that if you have a day job that is not missions oriented, to consider finding space in your week or time for continuing after a hackathon. Um, Maybe it's not that mission, maybe it's not the one you worked on, but there are many nonprofits who have these kinds of needs and would love to um, partner with you and have you volunteer on a quarterly or monthly basis. It's not super common, but that doesn't mean it's not possible and it's not good. And sometimes it takes you reaching out to say, hey, how can I serve? And collaborating together on what a good rhythm and what a good set of deliverables could be. But you can't do that if you don't have the space in your life. So I think that's a tricky needle to thread because you have to have space to do that. Um, the other way is to consider if you're being called into full-time missions. Um, One of the wonderful things I've seen happen over the last couple of years is there are a lot more mission organizations opening up positions, opening up opportunities to do this kind of work. I think there is a temptation to start your own thing, and a lot of people that go to hackathons kind of have this entrepreneurial spirit. But I would encourage you first to maybe see if there's organizations that are already working on something you're passionate about, and seeing if you can serve with them. You might be surprised to find more often than that they are interested in having folks like you, but they probably haven't had bandwidth or space because there's so many things to do. And to start it up within their own organization, even when they know they need it. So, um, I offer summer internships. A lot of groups are now offering summer internships. I think Indigenous has one. Cliff Associates has 8 weeks of code. Reach out to organizations and see what they have. We're not always the best at getting things on job boards, so I do think there's some amount of proactiveness on your part to go look at their careers and go look at how to get involved. And you reaching out and offering to be that first step is probably a huge blessing to that organization.
Yeah, that's great advice. Being proactive is a really good idea, like you said, because missions organizations aren't always great. First of all, at identifying what our needs are, and let alone putting them out there on a job board somewhere. So it's great
Yeah,
to be proactive and take the first step,
yeah.
especially if there's an organization that you really like or you're really into whatever
Mhm.
their particular mission is. Any other advice or encouragement for someone who has some sort of talent that they want to use for Jesus?
Yeah, I do think we also hold a responsibility to, when I talk about redeeming technology, to be really thoughtful, intentional about it. I think there's a tension that we do have to walk. It's really good that we can do things digitally. Webinars, we're doing this virtually. That's awesome. But I would say maybe coming out of the pandemic, and I would say my stance has shifted some, that it would still be best if you and I were across the table from one another recording this. And paying attention to asking, where is technology the best I can do right now? This is the best you and I can do. But also being the software developer or the designer or project manager to say, let's not only be on screens and let's not only be virtual. Did Paul use the tech of his day to write letters on parchment to the churches? He did, and he encouraged them, and we benefit tremendously from them. But I was very struck at the end of, I want to say it's First John. No, not John. No, yes, John. At the end of First John, who also writes letters to his churches. At the end, he says, "I just long to be with you." He visited them and wrote to them. So I think we have as technologists have to hold this balancing act between um, redeeming tech and using it in incredible ways, but also pressing us forward to the good and better things God has for us. And I think the other thing to remember is that the point is that the others are to come to know Jesus. I can get excited about cool tech and wow, that's like a really sweet app and things like that. But if it's not actually helping somebody or it's causing them to be distracted, um, then it's still not good. I read a great tweet, and I'm sorry to say I don't remember who wrote it. You know, just like scanning the feed. And it was something along the lines of, want to become a great writer, love your readers. Don't write something because you want them to love you. And I think that's true for designers and software developers. We make these things because it's an outpouring of love that Christ has for us, and we outpour that for others because we want them to love Christ and we love them. If it ever starts to be when someone comes to me like, that was really well designed, um, it's very easy, I think, particularly for designers, to start to take that creative act and feel godlike. Um, and so I think we have to be really careful about our stance, about where we suggest technology, about where we don't suggest technology, because we are the ones that know the most about it and know what it can do. Others are relying on us to hold that expertise and to thoughtfully and intentionally use technology in redeeming and helpful ways. But it also, I think, has a great capacity, as we have many of us seen and installed screen time apps and have quiet hours on our phones. That also has a capacity to take us away from the Lord. So I think we have to walk these lines of both our the way we think about ourselves as designers and the things that we make.
Yeah, that's great advice. However, we're using our talents and passions that God has given us. We need to keep the right thing in the center, and that is God Himself. So that's a great thing to keep in mind. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us. I feel like I've learned a lot, so I hope everyone else has as well. So thank you for joining, and may God continue to bless what you're doing.
Thanks. Would I be able to pray for those listening? I love podcasting and prayer. Can I pray? Thanks. Lord, I don't know who's listening, but you do. And whether they are faithful listeners to this podcast, or this is the first one, or you prompted them to this, I want to pray for every person listening to this that has been stirred or maybe has not been stirred, but particularly for the ones who maybe have heard for the first time that there's something for them or are feeling encouraged to keep going. I pray for whatever you are growing and planting in them, that you would give them the courage and the proactiveness and the centeredness on you to go after that. Because Lord, there is nothing better. It is a better way of life to take what you have gifted us and to use that. And so I pray that for anybody who has been wondering what their purpose is or has been wondering what exactly you are doing with their life, Lord, that you would give them any clarity they are seeking, and that you would prompt them to see how you have gifted them, so that you can look at them and say, well done, faithful servant, and how good it is that you have gifted us this way. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Whether you're a designer, developer, or however God has made you, there's a place for you in God's mission. So take time to pray about it and look for opportunities to serve in missions. One way you can explore using your talents in missions is at InterVarsity's Urbana Missions Conference this December. There's a technology pathway that includes seminars specifically about tech missions, book recommendations, and organizations that are looking for people just like you. If you enter the Hack150 promo code during registration, you'll get a $150 discount.